So we'll see if we're live. It says I'm live right now. This is me just verbalizing where I'm at with this mobile order fulfillment system that's composed of three different apps and like eight different backend services. I'm at I'm at like a sticking point or a plateau where I've invested a lot of time in learning and building and refining these back end services just to find out that my current either implementation or configuration is too expensive to run. So what does that mean? My the tools that I'm using, I'm not sure if my architecture is the right term to say, but the tools that I'm using, part of my infrastructure is Azure Functions that will revolve around both HTTP and Service Bus. And these are triggers, right? So these Azure functions are triggered from HTTP and Service Bus. And, well, Azure Service Bus. Like, that's the core of my backend system. There's also like Azure SignalR, but that's not the focal point. That's just an aspect, right? And the Azure SignalR is for tracking location. But it's the Azure Service Bus that is really the backbone of the system, because Azure Service Bus provides the capability for systems to relay status to one another without being tightly coupled to each other. Okay. So for example, I have my courier app and my customer app. All right. Maybe I switch it like this, right? So customer app places an order, courier app receives a request, can accept or decline, or timeout, aka forfeit. If it accepts, it publishes a acceptance. The the customer app receives that status of the order has been accepted, and from then it just sits idle and just keeps receiving status messages of, you know, courier is en route to pickup location, courier arrived at pickup location, courier is en route to customer location, right? Customer arrived at customer location. The package has been dropped off, right? So I've wrote several services. I've wrote a courier dispatch service. I've wrote a delivery request service. I've wrote a courier account service. I wrote a bank card transaction service. I'm like 90% done with the courier payroll service. Like, I wrote a lot of back end infrastructure and it works. It works. And I've been running this locally on my box, on my development machine. And so when I'm running two mobile apps via their emulator, and I'm running like 7 or 8 backend services all at once, all in parallel, it is just gobbling like the performance on on my development machine where things are painstakingly like slow. And so I say all this because in order to ease the load on my machine, I'm like, well, I think my backend services are mature enough code wise that instead of running these services locally off of my laptop, I can now deploy or migrate these services from my local machine to Azure, right? So I'm literally going to deploy these local services that are running on local hosts, blah blah blah, to Azure, right? And I'm going to now have my mobile apps point or publish data or requests to actual Azure endpoint and not local host. So I went ahead and did that, right? For like two days or 2.5 days, I started learning how to publish Azure functions and didn't think anything of it after I did it because I didn't run any integration tests afterwards. I didn't run any of my mobile apps afterwards. So I just publish and forget it. That's what I did. What could go wrong? Well, after 2 days of publishing the first service, I just happened to check my Azure portal and I just saw hundreds of thousands of messages just being published just in the last 2 days. No business activity, right? I didn't run the system. I just published the service. The service appeared to be running, and I thought that the service would, I don't know, only process a heavy load of messages when there is actual business activity. Hence, customer app publishes a request, a courier app responds to that request, and then the pipeline begins, right? And status messages are being published and received on the service bus. That's what I thought would trigger the majority of the traffic, like business activity. But that's not the case. What appears to be happening is I assume that there's just hundreds of thousands of messages, within like a couple of days of just infrastructure support or infrastructure activity. Nothing to do with the actual business transactions, everything to do with polling. That's what it looks like. Yeah, I could be wrong. I'm learning this, but that's what it appears to be. So I'm kind of stuck because I made the architectural decision of service bus being the backbone of my system, right? Customer app, courier app, backend services, like service bus. Thou shall use service bus. And it's based on my lack of understanding or fundamentals of Azure Service Bus. Right now, again, it could be a configuration issue. It could be an implementation issue, but it's not working out for me. So I placed a support request with Microsoft so I could better understand what calibration is available for me to like not have a heavy bill for just having a deployed or several deployed services that are idle that are still generating hundreds of thousands of messages, like, and that was just in a couple of days, which means that it's going to be millions just within the billing cycle, millions of messages. And so again, I placed a support ticket hopefully someone that is knowledgeable, that has observed the pain of others that made the same assumptions I have, can help me bring down this cost. Am I expecting this to be free? In regards to like operation expenses, no, but I was expecting this to be like pay as you go. Like I was expecting for Azure Functions, which is what I'm using, right? That happens to rely on not just HTTP requests, but also service bus, right? My assumption was that Azure Functions is this is my assumption, you pay for computing. Like hey, I need some computing right here. I need a computation. Okay. And you pay, a fraction of a cent for computation as you need it, right? And that hasn't really been my experience since publishing these Azure functions. I'm I'm not. It appears that I'm not paying for computation as I need it for the business, for a business operation. It appears that I'm paying hella money for unnecessary computations when there's no business operations taking place at all. So that's where I'm at right now. I feel like the closer I get to a minimal viable product, I feel like there's always some weird monkey wrench that gets thrown in this machine, this system that I'm building. I just want to get past it, and I'm not sure if I mean, obviously it's a learning experience. Obviously, like this stuff is going on my resume. Like no one can take this from me, but I really want to build a business. Like I want to unlock that achievement, and it's just becoming really challenging with these surprises. So that's my status, and I guess I'll end it. So I'm out. See ya.